Get lost.
I did. I need to go ahead and get my mask. I'll be right back.
Where you want, we got 6 foot. Man.
You're right here in the middle.
Hey,
You
Bill.
want
We're
to-
6
I-
foot.
I-
Bill, I have a clean mask.
I will take it.
We're on.
I'll wash it and give it back.
I carry them.
We did you a virtual vote.
I got a whole stack of them up here. I got some N95 brand new ones on the start on. So there you go.
We are
You're doing
live.
good.
Just saying.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I got lost. The girl passed. Then mother said, "I'm gonna-" Y'all made me get out of my cave.
You ready, Blair?
We're good.
Okay, all right. All right, we've called a meeting to order. Need approval of the minutes of the August 4th, 2020 regular.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, second by Donna, that we approve minutes. Okay, looking at the financial statement. Dashboard report. Things not looking real well this month, August. In the water, the revenue was 228,000. It's the budget of 236. And expenses jumped to 228,465 against the budget of 217,895. So on the water side of things, we're at a very, just about a break even on the profit and loss net income line against the budget of 18,000. Some of the expenditures, extra expenditures were related to the data system has been giving us some real problems.
Gotta be louder.
And so we've been working some overtime because we've had to monitor that, keep it running.
Yeah, it's gotta be louder. You can't hear on the recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
Get around the corner. There you go. Bend it down towards there.
There, is that better?
I got that. I'm sure it is.
And we also had maintenance expenditure this month of where we cleaned the well and the well field. That was about 20-something thousand.
It was a little over 18,000, on those accounts, there, the big expenditures were the cleaning of the well, which Tulane was 18,697, and we had our quarterly payment on the utility service company for the tank, so 5387. So that was, those two got booked there early on that expense line. We had some other things. We had to replenish some materials in our stock for distribution system repairs and new services, about $4,300 worth of material there that we had to buy and put in. So
Yes, those were at least one-time expenditures that we had planned for this year, but just hit all at once. Okay. Looking on down at sewer revenue, it's revenue was 109 versus the budget of 103. Expenses was 120 versus the budget of 150. So we picked up some there. And we have a better than budget on our than we were expecting. Most everything going across is pretty much within line of what we had budgeted for the month on the sewer side of things. Did we do some dredging, Roger?
We did, we finished our dredging program during the last period, so we did incur some costs there, but that's being capitalized, so that does not show up in the O&M statement. I think, just going forward, note where we're at. Production sales are down some. Remember, we actually cut our projections when we budgeted this year, I think 7 or 8% on sales, and the water's still down a little below that. So we're going to need to manage this budget, be careful and continue to monitor it closely. And I think that's the main. This last month, we had a tremendous amount of overtime expense associated with some control system failures. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes on what we need to do to resolve some of those issues. But those things accumulated and got us underwater on a combined basis of about $11,000, so we're showing a loss at this point on the profit loss. An operations of about 80,000. I'm pretty confident we'll get back. We're just going to have to continue to monitor and take whatever measures we need to take to keep things under control. So.
Cash balance at August 31st was just shy of $1,982,000. That compares to last year of $736,000. So we're hoping at our cash right now at the level that we like to have in reserve for operations. I think things are looking good in that area there. Any questions? For you on that. If done, we'll move on to the water meter, water reading equipment bids. That we've got. There's a bid tabulation sheet in your packet there.
Yes, I'll address that. Bids were opened up early August, I believe August the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. We had advertised back in July for our meter system replacement program. And we wanted to be somewhat flexible as we procured bids for this system. And the specs for the meters released were written around 2 different types of meters. One type was positive displacement type meter, which you would see traditionally in the system, the bronze body style meter with a nutating disc or oscillating piston type drive in it. And then the other type of meter is relatively newer technology with ultrasonic meters. And so, we solicited bids from different vendors, and good tell that you've got in the packet for the meter bids. It kind of summarizes what we had there. We ended up with 5 different companies providing bids on a variety of different meters. And Silas and I worked to conduct a review on those, and our recommendation on the purchase of the meters is to stay with the positive displacement style meter. There's several reasons for that. If we do have problems with the electronic side of that, we can still read them fairly easy in the PO if somebody has to do a reread or something to that matter. Some of the newer technology ultrasonic meters were just not able to do that as well. They're hard to see and hard to read if you have to read them manually. We have used the Mueller brand before, and the 2 lowest brand meters, positive displacement meters of Mueller and Zenner. The price differential was about $1,500 on a $140 some odd thousand purchase. And since we got Muellers in the ground and we'd like to try to standardize, our recommendation is that we proceed on and approve the bid given to us from Consolidated Pipe and Supply for the Mueller meters, contingent upon them supplying the Itron style radio read connectors that were specified in the procurement documents. And, you know, if for some reason they have a problem with that, we would recommend just dropping down to the Zenners, which are actually similar in construction, but it's a little bit lower cost. But I'm pretty sure that we can get those for that. The low bid was $143,071 on a Mueller meter. And that would be our recommendation on that. Before we can try to take action on that, I can talk a little bit about the radio read portion of that. Calvert Water has been has had the radio read capability now for about 4 years. Our last two projects where we rehabilitated the mains and replaced the mains in the Heights area subdivision, we installed radio read meters there. We actually went back on industrial meters or radio reads, and I said we've been in 4 years, actually a lot longer than that, 2013. Then we deployed the Itron system. Itron's a manufacturer, but there's several out there, but that's what we've been using. We have their software, we have their modules installed. We've not had many problems at all with it. It's been fairly reliable. Periodically, you'll run across a bad module and have to replace it, and usually covered under warranty. That said, we really had two viable radio read bids given to us. One was through Consolidated Pipe and Supply, where they provided a bid on the Mueller system, and the other bid was provided by United Systems on the Itron system. Now, the Mueller system was significantly lower in cost, but really didn't meet things that we wanted to included in the bid. They didn't really address leak detection modules and some other things. So they were deficient somewhat in some of the areas. It doesn't mean they couldn't submit a bid. We told them in the specs you can submit it, but you needed to point out where you had an exception with our specification. Silas and I have talked about it this afternoon since we've had such good luck with the Itron system, and we feel like we can swap these meters out with a lot less downtime, continuing on with the Itron system. So our recommendation is really to proceed on with the purchase of the Itron modules in their system. Right now, let me just kind of talk to you about what that bid is, and then I'll back up and talk about the other bid too that Mueller gave us there. But on the Itron system,
you're looking at Consolidated Pipe and Supply, the Mueller meter.
yes,
Positive displacement.
right, on the meter. So if you flip over to the next sheet, the other sheet that's got the radio stuff on it. So I'm going to talk about the Itron first. And Itron's base bid for their core system with the modules that we asked for, the antennas, the vehicle reader, and the software and setup training, base bid was $156,295. And those modules do include capability to integrate with the leak detection modules that we specified. The optional leak detection modules and the software that goes along with that is $76,995. And then we had another option for another new handheld data collector, which would give us all three electronic reading handheld data collectors that allow our meter readers to read the electronic meters or the manual meters while they're in the field during this transition process. So the Itron system and the Mueller systems have similarities, but they have differences as well. And the explanation on the leak detection, I think is warranted so the board can understand what that is and what that entails. When you go to electronic read or radio reads, the operators are not out there looking at the meter settings. So we're not going to really have any idea about leaks on our side of it unless somebody calls us and makes us aware of it, or we have some other kind of system in place to tell us when there is a leak in the area. So Itron has got the technology they've developed. Several utilities have implemented it where you put acoustic sensors on every other service line. And the acoustic sensors will sense and they transmit signal based on frequency of the sense leak. And when we go by and read it, the sensor will indicate with the software that there's a potential leak in the area, alerting us to a problem. So doesn't come without some expense, as you will see in these bids here, but it allows us to stay on top of where the leaks are without having to go to each meter setting every month. The way we're going to read these meters is we're planning on putting the main reader in our garbage truck or refuge vehicle and let them read them as they make the rounds. So that's kind of what we think we might do there. And then we'll have another reader that we'll use to do the more remote sections outside the city limits that we're not covering. So we'll be able to collect the data pretty rapidly within a day and process it and be ready to turn it in for billing. So that was the whole point of going to the system, is to free up the time to work on other things that we can improve the system. Now, the Itron system is proven. It allows us to step implement without many bumps in the road, but we'll have to pay a premium for that if we implement the leak detection with it. You know, you're looking at $30,000 to put that radio read system in. And we're budgeted for it. We got the money, but that doesn't mean that the board shouldn't consider the other alternative. The other alternative to that, with the Mueller system, you can see down below it, is its system is strictly the radio modules to read the readings off the meters. And it's about $105,000 or $104,800, which is, you know, that's less. And I've called around and checked references, and folks I've talked to say the system works fairly reliable. Now, to keep a handle on where your leaks are at on your service lines, most utilities deal with that by doing an audit, you know, on a certain periodic basis, some every 6 months and some every 3 months, where they go to each meter setting to inspect it and report if there's any leaks in the area, anything of that nature. I guess, you know, this afternoon talking with Silas, that we feel like, you know, we would like to have the Itron system, A, because for us it's been proven, and B, you know, all along when we've talked about this implementation of this technology, we have talked about implementing it with leak detection, because we want to try to really work on our water loss problem. We, you know, you'll see on that dashboard report, you'll see us running around 15-16% water loss. So we'd like to cut that in half, maybe even more if we can. And we want to get serious about how we deal with that. We think the acoustic leak sensors will give us the ammo to at least determine in the general area where the leaks are. And then we'll have to use handheld equipment to pinpoint those and make the repairs. But
Okay. Tell me the total numbers again. Looking up in here. On the meters, 143.
so the meter contract, we would ask for a motion to authorize us to enter a purchase agreement with Consolidated Pipe and Supply to purchase the Mueller positive displacement meters for a total cost of $143,071.
And on the radio reading equipment,
We would ask for you to pass or approve our contract with United Systems and Software to supply the Itron system radio, read system, vehicle reader, everything, for a total of,
No,
well, I've got it over here, let me look at the,
230, 156, 76, 905, and 3,000.
I got 255, 371. I said, no, I'm sorry. I said, no, I've got, 377, 215. That's what I've got. 377, 215.
So,
Let me back up.
But you get my increase per meter. The 156, 295, is that what?
Yeah,
Well,
156, 295 plus the 79.
yeah, plus the next two dams
Yeah.
on that page, it's all three of those items that we're looking at.
I have 235, 385 is what I've got. For the radio read modules.
Two thirty-five, 380.
So what you got? Okay. So that's our request and recommendation, you know.
Total for the- I had 43 over there.
Yeah. So you come up with 378, 456.
Now, with our radio readers, before we got into, we were gonna do that, and then they started telling us how they were gonna put ads on the bills.
Originally, you know, we were gonna do an agreement with United Systems in respect, and that's where we had a conflict on how we handled the website there, so.
Well, and I haven't heard you say anything about that, you know, are we doing automated bills based on any of these systems, or we backing up?
Well, we elected to stay with the G4 software, which is hosted here on site. So, but we will have an electronic portal, and we're going to have electronic payment and all the features that we're originally going to have, instead of those being in the cloud, they're going to be hosted on our website. So there will be no advertisement or anything of that nature. When we do our billing, there'll be no advertisement on the billing. It'll be just a straight out 8.5 by 11 bill, loaded up in an envelope with no advertisement in there. So,
Well, and then I recall us having major problems running things from our own system here.
we upgraded it.
And how's that going?
It's good. We haven't had any trouble that I'm aware of since we put our new server in. Is that correct, Linda?
How's our new server then?
Yeah.
No memory issues, it's holding all business transactions.
So, I mean, we loaded up the new version of G4, and that's what we got. It seems to be, it seems to be. G5 is the cloud-based, G4 is the server-based.
Okay.
That's what they call it.
Okay. Okay. So back to this, yeah. So leak detection, if you could get that down by half, I know that's gonna be labor, getting, repairing leaks and things.
But it will, so let's just talk about numbers real quick. I can give you some numbers off the top of my head, okay? So we produce probably around 1.1 million gallons a day.
Right.
So that's gonna be about 400 million gallons a year. And if we're losing 16% of that, so make sure I'm doing the math in my head, that's gonna be 60 million gallons. And so if we can cut half of it to 30 million gallons, which is 30,000, and our cost of production is probably around $1.50 to $1.75. So 30,000 times $1.50, let's just say that's $45,000 annually. Okay. Something like that. And we hope we can do better than that. We know that some of the laws that we got in the system to do with dead meters, they're just not registering properly.
And this is part of this solution.
Yeah.
Get it right.
So we're gonna increase our measured flow that's going to the customer. We believe that. I can't tell you that we're gonna tremendously increase it, but we're gonna see an increase there. And then if we can work on a loss, then we'll reduce our cost of production and get some of that back. And so that's what we're searching for.
We also talked about consumers being able to go online and monitor. Is that still like?
They'll be able to go online and see what their account history has been. Yeah. If we have a consumer calls in and say, hey, I want, no, this system is upgradable to the advanced metering infrastructure that we talked about. Advanced metering you could, have your meters read every hour and send it to the server, but we're not gonna do that. Right now, this is gonna be drive by and read on, and we're gonna see the readings once a month. If we have a customer is concerned about their usage, we can pull these meters and get our data off of them. Our operators can go to the site and inquire, we can give them that data and plot it up for them and show them what their trends are. Say if they've got a leak and they can't find it, they don't know what the nature of that is, we'll be able to provide that information to them. So, and that will be good. We've used that a lot on the industrial side.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That will help these industries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
The financing on this would be with Kentucky Rural Water. Yeah, procurement there for a loan.
We've
1.7% rate for
5 years, 5-year term. So
So we're not going to use the total amount.
well, so here's what I'm going to tell you. We don't know how many of our meter settings will have to be replaced as we go through this process. We know that we have a number of meter settings that have the stops on them broke. Silas can't tell you how many of those are, and he just knows. I mean, I could estimate, say it's 10% of the settings that we've got. We're going to address 1,650 or so settings here, and we're going to have to replace some of those. And those materials are expensive. I don't believe we're going to borrow that full amount, but I think we'll be north of what with that number we just said. I think we'll be north of it, somewhere in between the two.
Well, it looks like your looking at actual cost, all inclusive cost. At 1.127%.
Well, I mean, the effective, when you look at how that note set up, the interest rate is going to be, a little over 2% effective. When you add in the administrative costs and the cost of issuances on the note. So total payback on the note would be $497,917 on a $470,000 note. And so we have talked to the mayor, and of course, they would have to run through the council. But back when this was presented 2 years ago, the council, we had asked the council to consider putting a fee on to pay for this infrastructure and until it was taken care of. And there was a tentative agreement at that time to do that. So that's what we would ask again. That you see the debt service on that's right around 100,000 a year. That full amount's borrowed, and we believe that with what we asked for, plus what the additional measured water that we sell, that we can take care of this expenditure and pay it off. I would tell you that regardless of what we do, we've got a lot of old meters in the ground. We've still got Trident meters that were built in the 50s, and we know they're not measuring right. And so we're just in that mode where we got to replace them pretty much irregardless of what we do. The big expense here is to put the electronic read capability on it. We did the return on investment analysis, and back when we looked at it before, it was saying about 9 years return. I think it'd be a little bit better now because we're purchasing them ourselves on these bid prices. I wouldn't. I'm just speculating. I'd say 7 to 8 years return on investment based on the offset on the labor time out in the field. You know, our challenge is to make sure that we use that labor time wisely and remove the infrastructure so we can cut our labor burden even further and, you know, and keep our asset base up to where it should be. That'll be Mr. Trader's challenge there.
Yeah, but sure when it's done right, you're in there, that's time to fix it right.
Yeah.
Be done good.
We know that the Heights area just, it was significant labor burden introduced when we did that project. So things are
Moving
managed.
the lines out to the street instead of in behind the house.
Right. And all that new, just new
It's
service,
on
new piping, new service lines, no leaks, you know, in there. So just, you know, our next goal is to work down there in Rolling Hills and replace those service lines. We don't feel like we need to replace the mains. We don't think we got a lot of main lines, but we think we got a lot of service lines. It's all over that place. So,
Around the shopping center.
yeah.
All right, is everybody good with this? Can I have a motion to approve the purchase of the total of 378, 456, 143,071 for the meters. And the base bid Astron system, antennas, vehicle readers, software training, lifter leak detection modules, and the handheld data collectors.
Yeah, so moved.
Motion by Bill. Any other questions, discussions? Everybody good? Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All right, all in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the like sign. No opposition, so motion carries. We can move forward with that. So the other old Nemesis that we're trying to get repaired. Go to the wastewater treatment plant project update.
So to update you on the status of that project, our engineering team, Rivercrest and Chastain Associates have made quite a bit of progress and have issued a preliminary engineering study report. In that study, they looked at 2 sites for building the new headworks and lift station facility to replace the existing one that we've agreed to do under the corrective action plan. And, you know, after quite a bit of review, we met yesterday to discuss further. And we're recommending that the new lift station headworks be constructed up adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant. Originally, when we met about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had recommended, you know, based on what we knew at that time, that to go ahead and rebuild it where the existing lift station is. But we've done some work in looking at property titles and some of that information, and there's some concern about railroad right-of-way widths and things like that. We really don't want to fight, don't have the time to work through the issue. So we think that, you know, no more difference than what's in the cost of the project, that we want to move it up towards the wastewater plant. And the configuration of the lift station that we had looked at as a preferred alternate is a high flow, low flow arrangement. And we put, you know, we've got a wide variety of flows in our system still, even considering the amount of money that we've spent on infiltration and inflow reduction. We'll see our flows peak at about 4 million gallons a day in wet weather events. 4 million gallons a day is roughly you got 700 gallons a minute for each million gallons, so that's 2,800 gallons a minute or so. And And I think this thing's gonna be designed for a peak flow of about 3,200 gallons a minute, because one of the corrective action plan items is we're to eliminate all of our sanitary sewer overflows. And we will do that by increasing our capacity of our lift station. Now, on a dry weather day, like kind of typical summer days like we've had recently, you will see us, only our base flow will be down around 200,000 gallons a day, 200 to 250,000 gallons a day. So, you know, that's going to be an average flow of somewhere around 175, 200 gallons a minute. It doesn't warrant those big pumps. So the engineers have looked at that and analyzed energy consumption considerations, and have recommended a high flow, low flow arrangement to try to get as much energy efficiency as we can, you know, during the normal base flow periods. Our hope is we continue to work on the sewer system, we'll continue to reduce these peak flows, but we just can't bet on that right now. We just don't know the extent that we're working on. I've got drawings here if anybody wants to see them. But the wet well arrangement was essentially 4 wet wells. And they would have a total of 3 high flow pumps and I think 4 lows, if I'm not mistaken. But the other big element of the project is the headwaters. Calvert City has really never had a screen. We grind the solids that come in the inflow lift station. And so all that material gets into the mile solids. You know, one of the things that we've discovered as we work through this project here is we have to manage our solids in this wastewater plant just like everybody else does. We can't neglect those. So here about 2 years ago, we were faced with having to dredge all the solids. The ponds out there were half full of solids. So we couldn't get the wastewater plant to operate properly because we didn't have the detention time. And that's what got us in trouble with the state and in compliance. But once we got the solids removed, our performance of that plant, we're easily complying with our permit requirements right now. I don't know what, at least 4 or 5 months of compliance here lately. The only trouble that we've had of recent have been problems with our bacteria when we were piloting our parasitic acid feed system early on, and we got a handle on it. We had to learn how to the right dosage and how to run it right. And so we've got a good handle on it. We've been in compliance with those standards as well. So that's
what you know, these big flows like a rain this week, things going well. I mean, you got a lot of rain to test it this week, right?
Yeah.
Overflow.
So we did change our operating strategy a little bit, and we've got a little more freeboard in our system to store more wet weather flow. So we dropped our normal operating level a little bit, and then, you know, that allows us to store more wet weather flow, and that's the strategy. So we don't have any sanitary sewer overflows. That's what we want to prevent. We want to treat everything that goes through our system. And so that's what's going to be required to be in compliance. We've been well within compliance. I've been impressed, you know, for the lagoon system. We've had months where our solids and VOD both were less than 10 parts per million in the effluent, which is pretty good. You know, our permit limits are 30 and 45 during this period of time, so we're well below that. And the guys are doing a good job, but our lift station is old, and it really needs to be replaced. That lift station that we're using was built in 1992. I mean, it doesn't seem to be too old, but at the time it was a low budget project. And you know, it served us well, but it's time to increase the capacity and replace it. You know, once we get that done, you got a wastewater plant should last another 30 years design. If you dredge it, keep the solids out of it. And should we get there out again?
We need to look at keeping a line item in the budget on a regular basis, but keep those solids down. I mean, well, that need to be done every year.
Do you recommend it be done the same way? You know, buying something maybe and dredging it out and selling it at the end. You got another strategy in mind for some for your next.
Well, I mean, you could, I think we've got enough folks around that are gonna be doing that. I mean, just in general, the industry has neglected that.
Yes.
So the industrial folks have it, but the
There's a new
municipal
market.
So you're gonna have more competition in that market. We are getting ready to surplus our rig and sell it. So we're gonna, we basically have got it all out of the water and you've got all the material together. We're getting ready to surplus it and put it in the auction at all. So I'm hoping that we're gonna get $85,000 in it. We had 125 in, so that's a net 40 on equipment for what we did. I think that's pretty good value. I didn't really want to get into dredging, but we couldn't. I just felt like we were getting industrial prices for the dredging work here, and then the industrial prices would factor in a higher safety dollar value for production loss and would comply with safety programs. But not to say we did, but you got permitting every day that you work in industrial plants. You have to have certain permits and inspectors, watching every aspect of the work. And our guys were safe, but we didn't have to deal with the permitting system or anything like that. So
It's a way to alternate that system where you got 4 lagoons, do all 4 at once.
I think there's a lot of flexibility to do a lot of different things. It just depends on, they'll be out there sounding to see what the accumulation of solids are in the lagoons and use that data to develop your strategy. I know we got a lot more experience now than we had, so we don't have to deal with it. We're not worried about it at all. And even to the point that if we wanted to do it like we did the latter part of them, which turned out to be, it was a workable deal with that line stabilization. It's just expensive. There's no cheap way. The key is, like the chairman said, you need to amortize the expense and keep it on the books as an operational expense and make sure your rates are strong enough to support that expense along with the other expenses that you have.
Some of the other facilities in the area, similar things, but not limited to where they have done some rivers with their new facility that they put in. Called it. Right, so we've gotten some received, for instance, a lot of these small shops, small stuff. Really hasn't been done to get rid of them, but not I wait for 10, 15 years, 20 years. Yeah. We'll have to address it. Project on this, we budgeted close to 3 million, 2.9 million, with $1.4 million
This year.
and $1.4 million next year. And this phase of this project.
I can't hear you. You gotta get close. I can hear everybody else.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I can't hear me. Yes, that's the reason my wife says I'm always yelling on the phone at everybody. Anyway, we budgeted $1.4 million for this year and $1.4 million for next year, total of about 2.9 million. And we're looking at another financing arrangement with Kentucky Legislative.
No,
Yeah.
no, it'd be the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, and it's the Fund Aid State Revolving Fund Program, which is a program that's seeded with federal money. Now, the interest rate on that's 1.5%, that's a good interest rate. I guess the thing I was telling Silas that I grapple with is the sheer cost of construction compared to just 10 years ago. It's increasing tremendously. This lift station that we're talking about building is pretty similar to one that we did for Quebec McCracken JSA. It's about double the cost now than what it was when we did that project, probably around 2005 or 6. So I think it's a sign that I'm just getting old. Not keeping up very well, but But it is what it is, and it's something that we need to do, and it's a cost of doing business, and, you know, and this business is not cheap. You guys know from the years that we've been dealing with this, that it costs a lot more on the sewer system than it does the water system running. It just does. It's more expensive. It's the environment's more aggressive. And there's so many more variables that you're dealing with.
So after sitting in with Roger yesterday and reviewing the drawings and everything, we came to the conclusion because of the issue with the easement with the railroad and not knowing exactly from way back when, we don't know exactly where there's an easement there or whether it was turned over to the city or not. Greg did some research on it in Marshall County. We've talked to the railroad people. We feel that it would take too much time to try to sort all of that out. And for the very little difference in the two methods, we decided best would be to move it over on the close to where the lagoons are now. And then actually, the more I think about it, it's be handier for the operators and everything to be there on both and check everything out. So we want to give the engineering people the go ahead to start it. They need to do some wetlands research. They need to do some historical data searches in that area where we would be, where the pipe ties into the existing facility and runs across the field there. There's going to be some approval work done back. We need to get that done before winter sets in, so they can move on with it, so that we would be in a position to start excavating and laying pipe and everything and building starting in June next year, maybe July 1st. That's what we're looking for. So we need to agree that that's the way we want to go, and I think it's what they've got laid out. And Roger does too. Looks like the best option for us. They've done a lot of research on it.
Does this come under the agreed order too? So we've got to do this.
Yeah, this part of the corrective action plan.
Okay.
So that one thing that they brought up, you know, as part of the preliminary engineering studies, they did their analysis, you know, quite a bit of the site areas within the flood hazard area of Calvert City, and they didn't really address flood permitting as part of their engineering fee because they couldn't scope it without knowing. And now that they've done the surveys and scoped it, they are asking for us to do a contract modification to take care of all the flood permitting and getting the maps corrected in the area. Our wastewater plant is not in the floodplain, but it's shown in the map to be in the floodplain. So that needs to be corrected. In order to do that, I've got this scope of work, and I want the board to consider to modify their permit and get them on this to do it. But this work is associated with requesting a permit to develop in the flood hazard areas it now stands. In order to do so, they will have to complete a boundary survey of the 61-acre tract of property that's owned by the city there. We need, after doing the research and everything, we don't have a good boundary survey on that property. And we need to do that. And so just that in itself is something that we need to do. But they would also complete a topographic survey of the site to capture the data needed and required by FEMA to file a letter of map revision for field permit, and they would complete the appropriate forms and as-built survey of the finished improvements and apply for the letter of map revision field requirement to do what we're considering doing to build this lift station. And so they're asking for a contract modification of $18,350 And I do know, I went back and reviewed the original proposal, they excluded that specifically because they didn't know what the scope of work would entail. And now that they know, that's what they're asking for. I think it's probably pretty reasonable. You know, just the boundary survey alone on that would be pretty expensive on that 61 acres in the area that they've got working and to get that done. So there may be some other modifications that we adjust the contract down. There may be some things that we originally scoped in it that we're not going to be able to do. We'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there.
So that would be approval of a contract modification number 1 for engineering services for the wastewater treatment plant improvements. So we need to have a motion and a second to approve that.
Move.
Okay, Steve? Do I have a second?
And Roger, this is the engineering contract, right? We're not modifying other than the engineering contract at this point, right?
Just the engineering contract.
There's another $1,600 fees not included in 18,000. Is that generated from the change itself, or is that something that we have incurred in?
Well, it's something it's not really affected by this change very much. We would have incurred it regardless of where the lift station was. The reason they couldn't precisely identify that was because they didn't know the extent of what they were dealing with. And now that they did their preliminary work, they do. I've got a preliminary report if anybody wants it. I can make you a copy of it. It shows what all they found to be within the regulated floodplain and the data they accumulated there. I'd be glad to they sent that to me. In fact, I can email you what he emailed me, and it's got all those diagrams and everything in there, and you can see what he's talking about.
Basically, we're gonna try to get FEMA to allow us to make this money.
Yeah, and I really believe they will. Because a great deal of what he's having to do is based on an as-built survey that shows the elevation of the ground today as it now exists as above the regulated floodplain. Map's just not correct. And so that part of just what we call a letter of map revision. Now the place where we're going to be building the lift station is a letter of map revision for field, because we are proposing to put field and lift that area above the floodplain. And we'll have to work through John and the state. You got 3 levels to go. You got the US FEMA level, and then you got the State Department of Environmental Protection, then you got local. That's John, he's the local floodplain administrator. So permits are required to be filed with all those groups.
But once we get this all done, we'll be out of the floodplain.
Right, it won't be shown in the floodplain anymore, and it causes some headaches, trust me. Yeah.
All of the boundaries of the property that's out there.
Well, we're the wastewater plant, but now beyond the wastewater plant, the entry roads that are down on the rail services side of it, those will still be in the floodplain.
Yeah.
The part of the road that comes in and services through the fire training center will have it above the floodplain after this is done.
I don't think we need a motion on the location of the facility.
No, we don't need that, but we do need on the contract modification.
We've got that. Steve made a motion.
We need to vote.
We need to vote. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. For improvements. skipped over a line.
Six, well,
No, yeah, the supervisory control and acquisition system. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty important. I know we're going through a lot of material tonight, but
Y'all heard me say a while ago that we've been having issues with the SCADA system, and it's given operators a problem when the well field went out the other night. Silas got to sleep out in the rainstorm, thunderstorm, all that. So we need to do some work on that. Our system is, again, aged out as far as technology is concerned and operating reliability. So we need to, we put it in our budget, but we need to move it up in the budget. So get some work done there, and Roger has done some research on that. The Rick's Electric, I believe, currently using the system that was put in by Peter Hicks Engineering. So, Roger, you want to speak to that?
yeah, I mean, we have, best way to put it is, we have a hybrid SCADA system. Parts of it have been upgraded over the years, most recently with the water treatment plant controls upgrade that occurred in 2014, and then another upgrade for the wastewater plant that occurred probably in 2013. Of recent, our problems have been with radio communications, and we've been dealing with some infrastructure that's quite a bit older than that. Our well control system, probably originally installed in 1992, upgraded somewhere in the late 90s for radio. That's been a major element of the problem, along with the repeater on the water tower and the PLC that works in that system. So we incurred a lot of problems last year with it, and then this year we were seeing more recurring problems. And one of the major issues that we have with the equipment at the water tower side and the well side is antiquated and no longer supported anymore, and it's difficult to get replacement parts. It's a GE for the equipment, and those have been replaced with newer generation items, and so it's in time to replace. In fact, we were aware of that during the budget process, and the water committee, recommended, I think, $105,000 work on the SCADA system to bring it up to speed. With this latest group of problems, we struggled to get the thing operating, and have expended quite a bit of money on just responding to emergency repairs, and then overtime staff plant 24/7 as we were incurring problems with it. And so we probably one of the better telemetry firms in the area is Rick's Electric out of Mayfield, and we had Chris Springs of Rick's come down and look at the system with us, and he made several recommendations. And I was thinking that we had time to address this, so we had a failure this week. What night was it the storm came from?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. So, we asked Chris to go ahead and put a proposal together for us to go ahead and do something here to rectify the situation. You guys have got a copy of his proposal that's in your packet here. In his proposal, he scopes out what he's recommended for all of the sites here, primarily in the well field. We're talking about going from a radio for each individual well site to one radio at the well number one site, and then from that site we would feed the other sites with a fiber control system relays. And the purpose of doing that is to simplify the system significantly and improve the reliability of the system there. So it does entail work at both the well field and at the water tower itself. And so I guess our point of discussion tonight is we have this proposal that we think that will improve the situation greatly. But to approve this, agreement. The work that's quoted is $69,785,000. And typically, anything over 30,000 requires us to prepare procurement documents and take sealed bids on it, which we can do that. But in the meantime, we're going to run the risk of more expenditures, you know, and I'm confident we're going to have more failures to get that done. Minimum time to do a conventional procurement package and get the specs prepared, get it advertised, leave it out on the street enough time to get bids is going to be on the order of probably 5 to 6 weeks, practically speaking. The only other alternative to dealing with that is for us to declare that this is a need enough that it would be classified as kind of an emergency purchase and proceed on, you know, on an emergency basis with it. So that's the options. From a review of it, I believe that the pricing seems reasonable, but like I say, it's one of those things that we just need to make weigh the decision as a board and make the decision, and I'm willing to go either way on it. You know, how much overtime did we expend during the month of August roughly? You know, I know I thought I saw at least 40 hours a week extra, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I myself had 1 week with 70 hours, or close to 70 on 1 week. And yeah, I mean, we were probably averaging 40 to 50 a week on overtime, just trying to keep it running. But I mean, we were having to run everything on hand.
So part of the dashboard report you saw, I know that, I know right now, in our second month of operations, we're at half of our budgeted overtime expended on the water side already.
Water quality is an issue on that too. I know you can only do it by hand.
Well,
Working 24 hours a day.
you know,
Is it pumps at the well field or is it just plant itself?
It was everything outside of the plant, like the wells, water tower. And, one of our biggest concerns, of course, the wells wouldn't turn on by themselves. We had to go physically turn them on. But another one of our big concerns was I couldn't sit down at the shop and see what the water tower had in it. So I was having to go up there and read a pressure gauge. Well, if the water tower was getting close to overflowing, I had to manually shut down the booster station. So that way I could let the water draft off of the water tower. And it was just, I mean, it was a lot of work.
Well, it's not.
so that the reality of it is for us to even be talking about an emergency purchase, you're going to incur most likely additional overtime expenses that will probably negate any savings that you would make in a competitive environment on the bid. That's my guess on it, but
If we can do it, I say we do it. Or get somebody.
Well, we don't need operators.
Well, we don't.
Well, I would like to see us get in and you do this. I don't think this is more of an exception to the rule, but, just anticipating if this is going to be a problem, we gotta get things in place so we don't get in this situation where we can't do it as we're supposed to. And that's thing it is. And you certainly do that. A lot of times we do.
I agree. I mean, I agree 100%. I'm sensitive.
But I don't want to, we only got one salad.
Well, I don't like, I would rather get bids. I mean, that's the way I would rather operate.
Right.
But I can just tell you, last couple of times, last month or so, every other day, so I was gone. It's, we lost all communication again. I had to come in last night at 3 o'clock in the morning to deal with this.
This is not like you didn't know this was coming.
No.
It's just come a little quicker than we.
We put it in the budget plan this year.
Okay.
So that, when you look at that dollar figure, it looks huge, but let me talk to you a little bit about what all involved in that, so maybe you'll feel a little bit better about that.
Yeah.
He's gonna go out, he's gonna trench in a conduit out in the well field to tie all of these wells back together with this central radio.
Right.
Okay? So he's gonna be running a fiber optic cable through that conduit. And he's gonna be putting the control relays and the little controllers at every point to control that. So, you know, you're dealing with 5 points out there. If you were just to divide them up, and then you've got a 6 point at the water tower, it's a pretty reasonable cost when you do it. on
I
a
don't
per-
see anything water tower reference. here.
Well, it's on items number 7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Yeah.
I see it. Thanks.
He talks about installing new radio at the water tower.
Good.
So,
Any kind of, what kind of warranties do we have on this, on the work, the guarantees and stuff?
well, I mean, there's no specified warranty on this. I can ask him for one. The manufacturers will warranty the equipment, you know.
But you say, we know this group, Rick's Electric.
We know him, he's done work. He actually, that firm was the firm that put our controls in at the water plant when we upgraded the water plant control system in 2014, and they did a
Okay.
good job. You know, that's not where we're having the problem at.
Got it.
You know, our controllers here at GE, so one of the things that complicates the issue, GE sold the control division to Emerson, I believe, what is Silas. And, you know, as we go forward, we'll have to look at that. So I didn't want to get into working on the plant controls until we're going to talk about a new water plant here in a minute, because we're eager to flood you with information. But, you know, we wanted to stay away from that until we could address that issue. These sites on the periphery will work with whatever we do. And, you know, that's why I think it's pretty low risk on that money. It's not wasting money that you're going to turn around and replace. It's generic stuff that can be compatible with whatever we do at the water plant. So I
Did you
just
say we set money aside for this year?
105,000 in the budget.
The scope of the work we budgeted for in the water, was it this work? Is this what we're talking about?
That's what we budgeted for. Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you for answering my question.
Okay. Mr. Attorney,
Can you guys hear me?
in an emergency situation?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I can't, I'm not hearing everything. I'm getting the gist of what's going on here, but are you talking about, are you going to bid it, Roger? Or are you talking about declaring an emergency?
We're going to declare an emergency because we need to start. moving.
Okay. Okay, the mayor will have to do that. The mayor will have to declare the emergency. Have you talked to the mayor about it yet, Roger?
We have not.
Uh, What, I realize we're on record, but what are we gonna, what is the stated reason that we don't have time to bid it?
Because the control system has failed repeatedly over the course of the last 6 weeks, probably have had up to 3 or 4 or 5 failures. This resulted in an unanticipated expenditure of overtime. And the reliability is affecting the operation of the system negatively. It will take a minimum of 6 weeks to prepare a procurement package for it. We'll have to engage the services of an engineering firm to prepare the specifications for the procurement package. And noting time of the essence, we believe it's an emergency.
Okay. What's and the total cost is 100 and something?
67,000.
$69,785, and we had budgeted 100.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. I mean, okay.
Do you need to prepare something for the mayor to sign or something? Is that what needs to happen?
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to discuss it with the mayor and I'll have to prepare a declaration of emergency for him in order he has to do a certificate of emergency before you can do that. But okay, we'll just have to do it.
Yeah, that's, we'll have to have a motion to proceed in that manner, you know, I think.
So we're gonna make a motion to proceed to declare the CADA system emergency and request the mayor's permission. Is that what we need to do?
Well, you're just gonna ask the mayor to make a declaration of emergency in order to allow us to purchase this property or purchase this, property, whatever it is, system, and bypass the bidding because it would endanger the public welfare.
Okay.
Is that fair, Roger? I mean, are we gonna be able to say that it would endanger public welfare if we don't declare an emergency?
It has a potential to, I mean, it does have a potential to.
And it could have been,
Okay,
you know, with him the other night running everything manually in a thunderstorm, and you could very well have lost water on the tower, lost water at homes.
yeah,
I would think we could. Okay.
yeah. It's the kind of thing that, I mean, we all know it could draw criticism. You know, it's kind of, if I'm understanding correctly, it probably is an emergency now. And our justification for the reason we haven't done it to date is just lack of time or what? What's our justification for why we have not done it prior to now?
Because equipment was working, you know, we did physically replace it, but it was in this fiscal year, we didn't, you know, and then we had these failures all start occurring at once. And it'd been reliable. For
Okay.
a 12-month period and just unforeseen failure.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Here, I got some wording for you. Equipment deteriorated quicker than anticipated.
I see. I think we can justify it.
Okay. You could get, will you have it? Kind of like he said, that date.
I was thinking
Okay. So can I make a motion that we basically recommend to the mayor? Right, Steve?
Yeah, that we request a declaration of emergency from the mayor so that we can purchase this equipment without going through the bid process.
Right, okay, got you. Glad I got it.
I'll second it.
All right, motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Water treatment plant preliminary engineering report update. That's the new water treatment plant that we're working on. We got a report back from the engineers on that. And, I'll give you an update on that, so I'll let Roger do that. Let's talk a little more of that.
Yeah. So, Trend Associates been working on preliminary engineering for a new water plant now for probably 7-8 months. And they get to the point where they're finishing up the preliminary engineering report. Y'all recall the scope of work there was to take a look at what the needs of the system were in terms of treatment process requirements, location, proposed facilities, and things that you would normally look at, you know, to take a look at building a new water plant. And so they gave us an update of where they are. And I can just kind of give you a summary of what we were talking about, what we've tasked them with. You know, from a water quality standpoint, one of the recurring complaints that we have in our system is the hard water, and you've all heard it. And you know, it just is. The water is hard here. It's 200 measured on the scale. Most of it's calcium carbonate of origin, which is lime. So you know, when it's heated, it leaves a scale. It's not unhealthy to drink. In fact, it's probably good for you. But it just it causes problem. In fact, like we had a complaint today, you know, as we were in the office talking about this. So one of the things that we wanted the engineering firm to do to say, you know, we built a new water plant, what can we do to reduce the hardness? And they're factoring it into the study. It's a pretty significant element of what we're looking at from process requirement. They've looked at 3 processes here, and I'm not going to bore y'all with all the details. I'll let them give you an update when they come in to make their presentation, probably maybe at the next regular meeting. But you know, after they've done a review, they believe that the anion exchange process would accomplish our treatment goals of reducing the hardness down to a more manageable level of 100 parts per million, and make sure that we got all of our other treatment requirements in compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. In terms of secondary, primary contaminants and all the other things that we have to monitor for. So in this little report, they gave us some diagrams, what some processes would look like. And they gave us some preliminary opinion, some cognitive cost and performance standards. Some pretty good information in here. I did have some comments that I wanted to look at, but you know, with this ion exchange softening alternative, in all the ancillary structure and pumping structure, storage and everything, you know, you're looking at possibly a $12 to $13 million construction project, which is in range of what we had talked about. You know, it's expensive, again, another expensive project, but those are in line with what we originally thought we would do. They looked at some sites. They've got a recommendation in here for a site. I told them to look further. I think we need to really be looking at the site down there where the public works facility is. And the reason for that is the raw transmission mains on the south side of the railroad tracks, and they cross in that area by the Doctor Memorial Park. And I don't think we need to be drilling in and out of the railroad again. I think we need to really look at that site. And I know that most of the folks that around public works and government, general government and water, from my perspective, that would be a good site to share with the city public works group down there. So we've asked them to take a little bit more detailed look at that. They also were looking at some distribution system improvements to help remedy some bottlenecks that we got in the distribution system. You know, remember,
Before you go on.
Yeah.
So it's like the front page and the second page.
Okay.
Line softening to it. Yeah. That's fine, but I'm just, the 3 processes. I
Yes, sir.
understand why you're talking about line softening. I don't understand why we're talking about ion exchange and reverse osmosis. Are they related to hardening water, or is that another issue?
They all are acceptable forms of treatment for removing hardness.
So they're all, these are 3 options.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, so you know, the reverse osmosis, you're familiar with that, I'm sure, with your son-in-law.
Well, I know.
You probably don't engage in those discussions.
No, we can discuss his particular. I watched the 2 things.
But they can also be used for hardness removal in addition to what those guys are looking at. So,
Okay. I mean, I just didn't know that those other 2 were.
yeah, they're just different ways to remove
Okay.
the calcium carbonate out of, you know, and take it out. So those are pretty much the 3 accepted processes that are used in the potable water
Okay.
industry. So,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
yeah, so that they're all, you know, those are all reasonable things to.
Are you
look at.
saying that all of them are at this price roughly? You said 11 or 12 million. like that.
No, they're not. I mean,
They're builders.
yeah, if you look deeper into it.
Deeper?
Yeah. Say, a conventional lime salting process, they do about 21 million, and then reverse osmosis about 19 million.
I see that, yeah, okay.
in
12 million
ion
for the
exchange. And then they've got the other factors in the decision matrix there in that table. And they essentially say it looks like for Calvert City, the ion exchange would probably be an appropriate way to go. So, but I told them, you know, we gave them a little feedback on it. You know, with the quality of the water we got in our wells, there's some debate whether or not that we need any filtration there. And just based on our operating experience, we feel like we do need pressure filtration as a minimal. There's a firewall between our distribution system and the well field. We can sometimes have a breakout of solids, and we've had that occur. We catch it in our gravity filters now. I just think that's something that we need to make sure that we look at. So, but we'll be discussing that further, and they're going to address some recommendations on distribution system improvements. But in general, our distribution system in the area of our largest use is rather weak. We've only got a 6-inch main running on the west loop of Industrial Parkway. It's an 8-inch on the east loop. Down in that area with the Westlake Group and Arkham being our largest consumers, we do need to beef those areas up. So.
Come at the location of the facility, I was looking at this. Is there any room or is there any reason why we wouldn't put it out there by the well field?
Well, the only problem with the well field, there's a ridge out there, it's above the floodplain, but it's really close again to just skirting the 100-year floodplain. Yeah, I want to avoid that to the best of our ability.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the public works facility, you know, where they're at, I mean, it's close enough to the floodplain, but it's 5 or 6, 7, 8 foot flood. I don't know exactly, but the site that, you know, the city, my understanding is acquired the site over by the elementary school, and that's what they looked at and said, hey, that would make a good site too as well. But, yeah.
I didn't know what that SAT D was.
Site D is actually, it's in the corner of the park over there, and I don't think that's gonna fly too well, but it's over there, it would be just north of the skate park.
What are the green, what's the green stand for you?
The green areas,
Yeah, what are the green areas?
those are actually what they believe to be mapped flood, or mapped wetland areas, I'm sorry.
Well,
PFO 1A, that's what they believe to be mapped jurisdictional wetland areas.
Okay.
Then C would be right over here with the 6 and where the top building.
Right next to City Hall.
City Hall.
Yeah.
And then F, is it down there on the corner?
Yeah, that's where that's the
15,
old car wash. Yeah.
Well, I didn't figure it out.
What is it? Yeah, it's what?
Snow car wash site. Yeah.
Old car wash, right?
Before the country club? Yeah. Where you going? Okay, so right there, that's 4-way stop.
Correct.
I'm sure Steve would sell you some of his land here, right?
Sure. They don't want that around. But, you know, here, I mean, logistically speaking, you know, the water department, public works people, they share a lot of stuff. We do work together. We're all part of the same community here. And I can't tell you what the workforce is gonna look like 20, 30, 40 years from now. And I can't tell you what the resources of the city is gonna look like, but I think you need to be as flexible as you possibly can, and you need to share resources where you can. And our citizens will benefit from that for a lower cost, we would hope. So, and still maintain a suitable level of service. And that's just my thought.
Yeah, B is okay, but I had some concern we did across it underneath that railroad.
Dental Railroad has gotten to be a huge boundary for us. Every time we go in there trying to deal with it, and it's no offense to the railroad, they have their own regimen that they have to take care of from a safety perspective, and they don't want pipelines underneath the tracks. Every pipeline represents a potential failure, potential derailment, and when they're, shipping hazardous material and so forth, you don't want any accidents. So, I would like to avoid that at all costs. And the good thing about all of this deal is that we got that 16-inch transmission line that runs all up the way to the TVA merchant power plant. What we would like to do as part of this project is convert that main over to a finished water main. It's going to improve the transmission system greatly. Now we'll continue to have to supply water to TVA at our negotiated contract rate, but that's just something for the future. We think that there will be a benefit. That's a 16-inch ductile iron line, so it's pretty good from a condition standpoint. So
What is the railroad's right of way on both sides? Is it a federal?
it varies. It
does vary, though?
Calvert City, it varies quite a bit. You'll see some 40-foot wide. You'll see some 50. You'll see some 140. Depending on whether they want a siding or whatever. But it's variable.
When I was a kid, they had a fence down there. They had, I remember, because they had concrete fence.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
kind of
market.
Yeah.
They're still there. They just grew up. That's why the revenant's so good on the railroad. But they won't let you revenue. They'll be hollering at you.
Right across that crossroad.
So, I'm looking at this map page and it says recommended WTP location, property behind Calvert Elementary. This is recommended by
Yeah, that's recommended in the draft report by the consultant.
your consultant. Okay.
But your manager told them they probably needed to look a little harder at that. So,
Yeah.
mm,
And you said this main that we have in place is where in relation to A, B, and C? The yellow line, okay.
So coming from the well field, we have a 12-inch PVC line and a 16-inch ductile iron.
So you like potentially D because it's close to the line that crosses under the track.
Yeah, I would like to see it just to the east of D, which would be in the Public Works complex. When you drive into Public Works, the main building's on the left, you got a salt shelter straight, and then there's some land on the right side of that, above that lake, that I think that this thing would sit on and work. And so that's a thought. I mean,
They would put it right there on top of
That land at A.
yeah, you would have an easy interconnection with those mains.
Tell me about A.
that's,
Okay, so
A is property that used to be owned by Galen James Riley. I don't know who bought that now, but it's not, I don't know whose track that is. Okay.
It's on the other side.
It's on the other side of the railroad. And it's a workable track. It is, it's sitting there, you could probably make it work there, but you're gonna still, we'd have to pop one across those tracks to get the transmission, hooked back up into the network on this side of the tracks. I don't know, we may end up having to do that anyway. That's one of the things that we wanted to do in our original plans. We wanted something pretty strong along Cedar Street, so we fill that tank up in a hurry we can, if we have something happen out there on Main Street. But, functionally speaking, our system works pretty good. It has, on this side of town, we don't have that much demand up here unless we have a break,
even if we build a new plant, that land will still remain.
exactly, we'll reuse that line. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna try to reuse that ground storage tank over by Calvert Lumber where the plant is now. And let that be the supply for that industrial pressure zone.
trying to follow this on the map. I kept trying to follow the blue lines and then it dawned on me that's water lines, streets and roads.
Yeah, those are all just the water lines that are mapped in the shape files.
And that crosshatch down through there, that's
Cypress Creek,
where she starts putting accidents in there.
yeah.
And that's supposedly as far as it floods.
No, that's not the limits of the floodplain. No, they just mapped out Cypress Creek there and that's showing the wetlands. I don't know if the flood boundary is shown on that figure or not. I think it probably is, but it's shown in blue lines and it's hard to distinguish. It looks like to me. Like if you look at the well field, you'll see a blue line around the perimeter that the Forest 3 South wells, and that I know is above the floodplain, and then everything beyond that ridge is below it. So it's hard to see that. But we'll work on that and get that figure a little bit more, a little easier to read, you know, in the final report. We're putting sleep, but I think,
Yeah, but, you know, so this is just an information session.
yeah, it's just, I wanted to update the board on it, you know, just so when they come in, you'll be up to speed what you're talking about.
Hey, Roger,
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes, sir.
I'm gonna have to, I've got another issue taking place. I'm gonna have to excuse myself. Are there any specific issues that you're gonna need me for? Any other things on the agenda you're gonna need me for?
Now, I'll explain to the board the review on the next bill deal and what we got. That's the only other thing that you know, that had on.
Okay,
We can take care of it.
okay. All right. I apologize, but I don't have a lot of choice. I'm gonna have to step out.
Okay.
All right, guys. Does anybody else have a question that I need to resolve for you before I step off?
Now,
Very good. All right, thank you. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
thanks, Greg.
Sure enough.
That's what they included, but you know, we can tell them what we want based on what. That 3,000 square foot is quite a bit bigger than what we have today. We don't, you know, we're probably something about half that size on the size.
Yeah.
But those are the things that we'll have to iron out, you know.
Well, we may need a lot of water, you know, if we keep if we keep burning everything in the north, these people are gonna be looking for somewhere else to live.
Yeah. Good day.
Ain't almost water, it won't hold it.
All right, let's see, moving on. What you got, capital improvement?
You know, I think.
But,
Yeah. Yeah, so there's two ways to look at this. Here about 2-3 weeks ago, after the council met, you know, the board approved proceeding on with the Kentucky Rural Water Financing Corporation funding for the meters. And when they got to the council wanted to table that and discuss that and loan the water board the money to buy the meters. And I wanted to go back to the mayor and city administrator. We didn't get time during the budget process really to talk about the projects that we were doing. So we simply took the capital improvement tables out of the budget, went to them and said, look, these are our funding needs for this next year. And it's not just the meters, it's a bunch of other items. We want you to really consider approving us, letting us move forward with that loan on the meters. That's part of our funding plan we had set up. All that was in the budget. There's probably no need to go back over that tonight. And after we had time to present that to John, the mayor, they saw what we were talking about. So originally, if y'all recall last year, they authorized basically $1 million line of credit for us when we needed working capital to address certain capital improvement needs. And after we had that discussion, you know, the mayor seemed to be agreeable to allowing us to proceed on with that rural water note. And then he recommended to take care of the other capital needs that we have planned this year to increase that line of credit to $1.3 million, you know, provided the council reviews and improves that. And that would take care of our funding needs. Now, as part of that, you know, we talked about the need of setting a schedule to pay it back out, you know, back to the general fund. And they were going to discuss that and get that settled as well. Glenda had talked to the mayor about that too. You know, our cash has been holding up fairly well, and we can afford to go back and replenish that fund as needed. You know, the upcoming needs, we had a couple, we had the sewer rehab schedule, but the one that's most pressing will be to tie in or do well number 6 that we drilled and to run a transmission over there to that. And this money that we talked about, the SCADA system is going to come out of it too. So that's really an overview of what that was. We can get into the specific projects if you want to, but those tables are included in your packets.
As long as we're repaying it back, it's still there for us to get.
Right, yeah, I mean, they basically good pay, you know.
It's, we need to look at that. Plan on setting up some kind of funding mechanism back.
I think so.
Be adamant about paying it back unless we can absolutely can't. To be better. Electronic payment and customer service, we kind of hit on that a while ago, but a little bit. But we got it soon.
Well, the agreements are ready for the mayor to sign. Greg has finished the discussions with their council regarding the language that were in the agreements. So we're good to go. And my understanding is they're going to present those and, you know, with an agenda for the council meeting next month. The mayor may be able to sign without that, but we're going to be good to go here in the near future. Is that correct, Linda? Yeah.
They don't need a waiver.
All right, any other, well, it's a special call meeting, so really we don't have any other thing we can address. Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
I say.
All right, we have a motion to second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Cuddy could get some call or something.
He did.
I mean, we at least wait for it to stop raining before we shake our hands.
Appreciate it.
I would.
This work all right for everybody?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'm all
I think it's a
for it.
little better than us not being able.
So good to be together.
I probably talked to about a dozen people who got a notice on the positive.
They
What?
got a notice,
Signed up for it, and got in
Say
line.
that
They
again.
didn't stay and do it. They
Say,
left.
say that again.
They got a letter saying they tested positive for this virus when it hadn't been tested.
I know, I have heard that same thing. And not necessarily in Kentucky. It's
Right.
been in other states.
This was in the,
That they got tired of waiting.
and it
They had
left.
signed that they wanted it done. They got tired of waiting, so they left. Then they got a letter saying that they were positive. They hadn't even had the test.